Muy buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por su presencia y su atención en esta sesión de los viernes. Y ahora cambiamos al inglés para presentar al doctor Luc Lanain. It is a pleasure and honor to introduce this time to Dr. Luc Lanain, who is a visitor for this time to give a seminar in the series of physical oceanography seminars of the department. Dr. Luc Lanain holds a PhD in physics and from Paris-Saclay University, associated to the École Normale Supérieure in Paris-Saclay. He's an associate research scientist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, University of California, San Diego, and director of the RC International Interactions Laboratory, which is affiliated with the Marine Physical Laboratory and the Climate, Atmospheric Science, and Physical Oceanography Division at that institution. His research integrates laboratory experiments, field observations, remote sensing, theoretical analysis, and numerical modeling to advance understanding of air-sea interaction, upper ocean dynamics, and ocean surface processes. And this time, we have the honor to have him to talk about an unprecedented view of submesoscale surface currents and waves. Luc, thanks a lot for your visit, and you're welcome. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thanks, Paco. Thanks for inviting me to give a seminar here. I am really next door. You know, San Diego is not far, as you guys know, so it's a pleasure to be here. As Paco mentioned, I'm the head of the air-sea interaction laboratory. We try to combine observational techniques, numerical simulation and theoretical approach to further understanding of the physics of the coupling between the ocean and the atmosphere. We do a lot of different things, anywhere from lab experiment down to looking at the sea spray fluxes and micrometer kind of size or scales, all the way to mesoscales, or looking at wave current interaction and all those things. But I thought today would be a good idea to introduce you or discuss some of the progress my group has been making in developing better observational techniques and understanding of ocean surface currents, which has been a big impediment to a lot of developing better understanding of ocean mesoscale dynamics. So this is work that has been done with my group. There's we're about a dozen people. I didn't name them here, but I'll be mentioning them throughout the talk. So I think most of you are physical oceanographer or atmospheric scientists, and one of the biggest challenges that we're faced with as numerical simulation are getting to higher resolution. Mesoscale, we have a pretty good handle on this, but now that you get to higher resolution, you get into the submesoscale regime. Better understanding and better parameterizing those processes requires better observation of the spatial temporal variability of ocean currents in particular, and also scalars like temperature, density, and so forth. It is extremely difficult. There is different ways to do it, but obviously there is remote sensing approach, which are going to be, let's see if I can use this here, which are going to be focusing on the surface. But the surface, the connection with the deeper ocean and the dynamic of the deeper ocean, understanding how they relate is not trivial. At the surface, you have waves, you're going to get orbital motion, you're going to get Stokes drift, et cetera. And this is an area where observation are especially challenging to conduct. This is really the regime that I'm interested in. To put a little bit of context, this is how people have been measuring ocean currents, so far. Like you can use research vessel. This is what you see here. You stick an ADCP. You get current profile and you get observation along the track of the ship. You don't get observation close to the surface. Typically, you don't get anything anywhere closer to, roughly in the first 10, 20 meters. You can use drifters, like Ranjan drifter. There's a large network, and here I'm showing a map of all the different sensors that are available. There is a lot of them, but considering the scales that we're trying to resolve, there are actually very few of them. It's only a few thousand that to represent, back here I'm showing variety type of sensors that are also measuring wave. They are in a pseudo Lagrangian frame. They're following the wave, but they're also drifting, which implies that they're going to be caught into convergence zones, associated with some mesoscales. And these are the things that we're especially interested in. I don't know why this is ultimately, if you're utilizing those kind of drifters to characterize ocean currents over another way you can measure current Bengal, where we deploy multiple array. It's complicated. There's a logistical aspect. You need a big research vessel to deploy them. And then if you're after some mesoscale currents, and hopefully this is going to work here, one of the approach that we've been taking is, take those vehicles, get the difference in measurements spatially. You can get information about divergence, vorticity. Divergence will give you vertical transport. A lot of important information to grasp dynamics. But the mesoscale processes are, obviously small spatial scales, but they're also rapidly evolving. So, mesoscale is going to be evolving on the scale of a day, and the scales of hundreds of kilometers. On the other end, some mesoscale is going to be evolving on the scale of 1 hour and a few kilometers. So how does it translate here? Okay, this is working. So this is the army of wave gliders, or 7 wave gliders that are trying to track a front of Southern California. This is color-coded for temperature. Red is hot, blue is cold. And what you're seeing here is that we're actually actively driving, and I'll play it again in a second. We're actively driving those vehicles so that we can track a filament that is propagating to the west. So here we're getting ready. We know there is a front somewhere around here. So this is cold water. Then we go across here. So we're back in the cold water and like, oh, shoot, we have to go back and forth. So this is pretty much a challenge that you have, observationally, when you do things in situ. You're always behind and you don't know where this feature is going to be. So you have to switch to something different. A lot of people have been using orbital products. So you can do altimetry. I mean, from the days of Topex Poseidon, altimetry has been revolutionizing our understanding of mesoscale dynamics. The whole the approach is just from altimetry and doing geostrophic assumption, you can infer geostrophic currents, and that works really well for mesoscale because you're limited to 10 days, like average product with a VISO, like just combining a bunch of altimeters. Or, in the case of SWAT, this is what I'm showing here, you get to higher resolution within one swath, but the repeat cycle is only 21 days. So you miss this temporal information. So it's a bit of a long introduction to really motivate why we have been pushing in this direction of developing new ways of measuring ocean current down to the submesoscale. So I'll be talking about two projects and two papers really today. I'll start going airborne with a project called DubViz, where we capture the near surface currents and currents utilizing and leveraging the dispersion relationship of surface gravity wave. And I'll finish with a very new project called GoFlow that utilize weather satellite and orbital imagery to measure currents at unprecedented resolution. Weather satellite. So what you use, I don't know if you're familiar with Windy. Yeah, like those kind of sometime when those cloud imagery, and that kind of things. There is actually 16 bands, 16 wavelengths. So the atmospheric community has been using it quite heavily for weather and climate prediction. But there is infrared band that capture information about potentially the kinematics of the surface, and it has been completely, well, not completely, but mostly ignored by the oceanographic community until now. I'm very excited about it, so hopefully you will be too once I talk a bit about this. But I'll start with observation of near surface currents from an aircraft. This is all optical system. This was motivated by a NASA project called S-Mode. So this is an Earth Venture suborbital mission that actually ended just a few months ago. And the overarching goal of our program was to characterize the contribution of the submesoscale ocean dynamic to vertical and horizontal exchange of climate and biological variable in the ocean. So how much, what is the role of submesoscales in this exchange, in this coupling, and also in the transport. My specific contribution initially was really, focusing on ocean surface wave and breaking, because this is, really where I'm coming from. And a lot of those submesoscale features, filaments, are often associated with breaking enhancement and, through wave current interaction. We used, as part of the project, as many instruments as we could find. So we had an army of gliders and surface vehicle, wave gliders, sail drone, ships, 3 different aircraft, remote sensing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we deployed off San Francisco in the California current in the region where we knew we were going to get a lot of submesoscale features. the thing that I'll be focusing on today is the MAS, the Modular Aerial Sensing System. It's an airborne package that we developed at the RC lab. I started working on this with Ken Melville back in 2010, I guess, or so. And it's a very small package that is built around a scanning waveform LiDAR. This is an instrument that enables you to get topographic maps of the ocean surface at very high resolution. I like to show this flight. It's getting old now. It's from 2011. It's one of the first flights we did with a MAS. This is a 3D point cloud color-coded for height. This was in Gulf of Mexico. Spatial resolution is about 25 centimeters horizontally, so super high resolution. This was in the case of 12 meters per second wind and significant wave height of 3 meters. And I like to point out those outliers over here, which are not outliers, actually birds flying around the buoy. So it gives you an idea of how much resolution you can get. Combined with the MAS, we have a lot of electro-optical system, infrared camera, hyperspectral camera, et cetera, et cetera. So we can capture any kind of ocean surface processes, wave kinematics, wave breaking statistics. I won't speak too much about this right now, but what I will be focusing on is an instrument that I call DotViz that we developed during COVID because we were stuck in the lab and came up with really an answer to a problem that we had for many years. We were doing a lot of wave breaking and airborne surveys, trying to better understand wave current interaction processes. But measuring currents at those resolution was a huge problem, especially like from an airborne platform. So that's really what we came up with. So the basic concept behind DotViz is fairly simple. You take an aircraft, you're flying in a given direction, and you do what you're not supposed to do if you're familiar with photogrammetry. You, instead of pointing a camera like straight down, you point the camera slightly at an angle so that you have a much bigger field of view. Prime is that the georeferencing, like knowing exactly where each pixel is, become extremely challenging. You have to be very precise in your analysis. But if you do this precisely, you can get an image like this. So this is what I'm showing here, just the surface of the ocean here. This is just an instance, and this is maybe like several kilometers in length. And then, as the aircraft is traveling, you can effectively map the same region for a certain amount of time, which enables you to start capturing the spatial temporal variability of surface processes and wave breaking. So you can imagine that I added a plane. So, I mean, we're taking a photo, but it's just to give you an idea. So this is twice the speed here. So this is about 1 minute of data or so. So you can imagine this as being those little squares are like as if you had like a drone flying over an area. And over the course of an entire flight, you can have thousands and thousands of those little squares or really cubes of data. So you're looking at the spatial temporal evolution of the wave field. So if you talk about spatial temporal evolution of the wave field, what comes to mind is the dispersion relationship. And you take one of those cubes here, kind of like what I'm showing over here, one of those is a square. This is about 256 meters by 256 meters. You do a simple 3D FFT, and the energy, obviously, is going to be falling on the dispersion relationship. The dispersion relationship is going to be modulated by currents. And different wavelength are going to be feeling different depths of the current. So you can actually retrieve a current profile out of this. I should mention this technique was not new. I mean, it goes back to Duggan back in 2001. This is also the same idea behind X-band system, WAMO system that people have been using. but it was never used from an aircraft in that way. And in particular to capture the vertical shear. So obviously we're limited with what we can resolve, and I won't go into details of this, but I can, the paper actually covers it pretty nicely. But this is, so this is what we get from one cube. The question we get right away is how well does it compare to in situ observation? How do you know you're doing a good job? So during S mode, we had those wave gliders that were equipped with ADCPs. So I'm just showing some of the, the way we had them set up. We had one pointing down, 300 kilohertz to look at deeper water, and one looking up closer to the surface. And long story short, if you combine things together, this is zonal and meridional currents. This is in log scale. And Dove's is giving you really close to the surface current profile from 30 centimeters to a few meter water depths. And if you compare to the ADCP, we have this nice continuity between all those observations by looking at collocated data. And this is not just for one case. It's also, if you look at all the different that we have, we find very good agreement. So we're able to measure the current profile at one location with one cube, and we're flying an aircraft, going 50 meters per second or 60 meters per second, so we can cover an entire area very quickly. So if you take an entire flight track now, this was one of our flight during S mode. What I'm showing here is the track of the aircraft color-coded for temperature. So this is hot, this is cold. And in white is the estimate of depth average current from Dove's. So we find, first of all, I should mention these are reciprocal passes. So you see kind of like two sets of quiver plots. You see that there is some nice correlation between some of the patterns that we see in temperature, as well as some good agreement between reciprocal passes with some difference that you see over here. And those differences are physical. This is associated with inertial currents. There is it takes some time to go from one end of the leg to the other leg. So now that we have very high resolution surface currents, what we did with a colleague, Mara Freilich at Brown University, is to start looking at the transition between balanced and unbalanced motion, the mesoscale to submesoscale, using those kind of product. In short, I won't go into detail here, but I recommend you to take a look at this paper. We showed that the cross-scale kinetic energy flux is localized at some mesoscale front. This is an example here where there's a front, and this is really where we find all the kinetic energy fluxes. So again, demonstrating the importance of those mesoscale in your energy balance, but as well as the kind of like the spatial extent of the contribution of those features. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at this for now. So I mentioned that our background is also like really on wave current interaction. So now that we have currents, we have waves from the LiDAR. We have information on some of the surface processes from the imagery. You can start combining some of those processes or those observations together. And in particular, one of the things that we've looked at is looking at the effect of local effect of wave current interaction. This is a series of papers that we did with a former postdoc, where you find Hannon's braking associated with the frontal boundary associated with wave current interaction. So by having those collocated observations, then you can start really investigating how those processes occur, in particular the role of the vertical shear in the effectively the modulation of the surface gravity field. And just to be clear here, so you see there is a front, on one side, this is warm on this side and cold on this side. The modulation of the wave breaking processes is not associated with atmospheric forcing. It's not like the wind stops at the boundary of the front. It's, effectively what you see when you have, internal waves, for example, propagating. You have like those regions of smooth and rougher surface associated with internal wave currents modulating the surface gravity waves. The same idea here. So we have been exploring, how we can, how this modulation occurs in the context of submesoscale dynamics, and but I'll just skip through it. I guess like what I wanted to show here too is in terms of the resolution. Now that you have some tools where you can capture those kind of processes, if you know where they are, you can go sample them. So this is an example also from SFOD, where we flew in zigzag over a submesoscale feature. If you do some objective mapping, you see this nice kind of like counterclockwise rotating features. There's an eddy here, and if you plot the ocean surface currents, computed from Delta, this is what you obtain, which show very good agreement from with the IR imagery. If you do have some spatial information of surface currents, what you can look at very quickly is obviously the velocity gradient statistics. So you can look at vorticity, which provide you with a clear depiction of two eddies, small scale eddies, about 5 kilometers maybe in diameter. And I'll point out that if you look at the normalized, or if you look at the Rosmi number, I mean, it's about up to 2.5, 3F, which is very energetic, as well as divergence as well, which obviously you want to look at if you want to look at vertical transport. It is noisier, but there is some correlation with the flows that we have been exploring as part of the program. Flying regularly also, not only give you small scale variability of those processes, but if you fly over several days, you can start looking at the evolution in time of those eddies. So this is over 3 days. You can see those, 4 days actually. You can see those two eddies kind of like rotating like around one another and actually merging. So we're working with Mara on trying to better understand how, what are the point where those two, what are the factors for those two eddies, instead of like just rotating with one another, actually how they're merging together. Yeah. All right. I'll skip through this actually, so I have a little bit of time for some of the rest. So this was back several years ago. This was our first foray in trying to develop new observational technique to capture ocean surface currents, down to the submesoscales, 250-meter scale, and in particular getting spatial temporal variability of those ocean currents. This was, there is nothing like it. At least at the time, it was fairly new. The challenge though is, it was very limited to having a specific experiment, an aircraft, a lot of things, a lot of logistical aspect to it. It was maybe not sufficient to do more global studies and just a different part of the world, especially in the Southern Ocean. So one project that I really want to focus on today is GoFlow. This is a new approach to measuring ocean surface currents at the global scale from existing orbital sensors. And I'll tell you a little bit about how it started, which was maybe for the students, it's important sometimes to trust your guts and to follow your instinct, because sometimes something really good will come through. I mean, there's a bit of a creative aspect to what we do, especially not following the standard paths. So I mentioned earlier that I spent a lot of time deploying wave gliders, and we had an experiment in the North Atlantic near the edge of the Gulf Stream. This was back in 2023, sorry. Wave gliders require power, so I was worried about clouds. So I spent a lot of time on a website called Windy. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It enables you to show you a lot of real-time weather satellite imagery like this. Okay, so people are familiar with this. And I was trying to cross the north wall of the Gulf Stream with my wave gliders. And I was also worried about power because it was very cloudy. And this is a visible band, but 1 kilometer spatial resolution, 5-minute temporal resolution, super high temporal resolution. Wave IR band. What I started to realize is I could see the imprint of the ocean surface, the ocean temperature, and in particular the Gulf Stream. But what struck me is that I could actually just in Windy, just looking at it, I could see the north wall of the Gulf Stream moving within a few hours. So I do a lot of image processing. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So maybe I can track it. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to try to download the data, which was not trivial. And if you download the data in another day, like this is an example where I change the C-axis, as opposed to focusing on the cloud. This is an example of the Gulf Stream region where I didn't do any processing. I downloaded the data and I'm just showing 30 hours of effectively SST imagery. And I'll just see if I can do this here. This is how it looks like. So I showed this to a colleague, Roy Barkin, and I won't say what he said when he saw that, but then he said it looks like a numerical simulation. So in fact, if you look at the log grad T of just this product that is readily available, and imagine that you have decades of data, that are available with this. We can't see through cloud, sure. Like this is optical, so we can't see through cloud. But you can clearly, this is the cloud, but you can clearly see, like the intricate, motion of the submesoscale features, the Gulf Stream meandering, et cetera, et cetera. So the trick then was your eyes is saying, like those things, and how do you translate it? So what we did first is standard image processing technique, PIV, optical flow, et cetera, et cetera. But it worked where there was a lot of structures in the temperature, but it was not sufficient. And I should stress again that this is 2 kilometer spatial resolution, 5-minute temporal resolution. So extremely high resolution. And these are data that nobody had used before for this. So we actually worked secretly on this for a year and a half because I was really worried somebody was going to run with it before we did. So we ended up steering away from a standard image processing technique, and we reached out to another friend, Kaushik Srinivasan, who is an expert in machine learning. And when he saw those data, I was like, oh, this is perfect for machine learning. So what we ended up doing is training a model that predict ocean surface currents based on the sequence of thermal imagery, so, 3 frames, this is what we're showing over here, just separated by 1 hour. They're very simple. And we trained the model on LLC 4320. So we trained the model on 1 year of model data that where you have an estimate of the surface currents, the temperature, and you just predict it. You learn, you train to, actually, we tried a lot of different things, and the paper goes over the architecture, but ultimately a very simple U-Net work. Once we have this trained model, we apply on the inference, which are weather satellite data, and we take 3 frames, like I just showed you, and from those 3 frames, we obtain a surface velocity field. We tried a bunch of things. Generative diffusion model was trained. It didn't really work, but then actually now our new version, and I'll allude to it at the end, actually is based on generative AI and shows some greater promise. There is a lot of subtleties in the loss function, if you know about machine learning. It does, it's all described in the publication. The code, the entire code, everything is available on GitHub. But how does it look like? So this is an image that I showed before. So this is an SST image at a given time on April 13, 2023. Here is a prediction that we get from GoFlow. This is actually downsample so that you can see something. And again, we're capturing some of the intricate details of the structure of the flow. The Gulf Stream with strong currents. Some of this small features over here, and I guess the novel, one of the biggest novelty of this approach is that we can start getting temporal information. So when there is no cloud, you can look at a given area and look at the temporal evolution. And it's really important because if you go back over here, I don't know if you thought on this, but you see the inertial motion. You see this displacement, from north to south. And that's something that there is just no observation, no spatial temporal information of this signal. So that's really an important feature of this approach. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have spatial information about current spatial maps, you want to look at velocity gradient statistics, so you can start looking at the dynamics. So this is an example here of, this is SST. This is log grad T, which really puts some emphasis on some of the small scale frontal features, and vorticity and divergence. Divergence is messier. It's, this is kind of what you would expect. And those kind of maps, better over here, really, agreed with our understanding of submesoscale dynamics that we so far have only been able to explore through numerical simulation. And the trick to here is that we can actually look at it as a function of time. That's really the major advancement that we have here. And you see how much, and I think to me what was striking is the realization, submesoscale is highly, variable temporally, but until you see it, I think once you see it, you realize how little you can do from ships, from in situ observation, because you're constantly behind and aliasing your signal. question of validation. Obviously, this is first question reviewers were asking us. I mentioned how it started, this experiment in the North Atlantic. Well, I used an ECP from ship. So I had this, this was on the Nesma cruise. So I had a nice transect where I was going across an eddy on the way out to the experiment site, and there was no clouds. So I took data closer to the surface, which was about 25 meters, that didn't have any interference. And if you compare it to GoFlow, black is from the ship, and red color-coded as a function of time is the estimate from GoFlow. So both very good agreement in terms of magnitude, but also we capture some of those submesoscale kind of like variability, which was really nice. You go through the paper, we validated some of those, we also conducted validation, extensive validation with drifters over several years. We SWAT data or SWAT geostrophic velocity or really geostrophic velocity. Another way to validate those observations is comparing it to AVISO, which is a gold standard from orbital imagery. And this is, if you take an AVISO product, so it's a 10-day product for this one day, April 13. And for the sake of comparison with GoFlow, I decided to look at the vorticity. This is what AVISO predict. And for the same day, this is what we predict. And effectively, it makes sense because AVISO is a 10-day average, to generate those products. So what effectively is happening is, those kind of features here that looks like an elongated eddy is not. It's just an eddy that has been advected in different directions. So it completely makes sense, but I think it opened the eyes of how sharp those features are, and how careful you have to be in the way you're interpreting kind of like mesoscale assimilating a product. We compared with SWAT, which also was important because this was released as the orbital system that was aiming at getting information about submesoscale. They have a SWAT L3 product that supposedly is removing the noise better. And like here, what I'm showing is this is GoFlow, this is vorticity from GoFlow. This was closer to shore, but still across the Gulf Stream. And what you're seeing here is that SWAT actually picked up like some of this vorticity signal that we see over here. The magnitude is different. And SWAT is very noisy. And that's associated with the fact that SWAT is going to be also picking up signal from waves, from internal waves, which we will not, because SST is not going to be, there's going to be very little advection associated with those waves. So that's one of the strengths of the method. Looking at, again, trying to better understand, frontal, like the mesoscale dynamics, a standard way of looking at those observations is looking at vorticity strain diagrams. A lot of work has been done through numerical simulation and a few observational study trying to understand by inferring like frontal genesis process and release some mesoscale dynamics from the statistical properties of those joint PDF or PDF of velocity gradient statistics. In a nutshell, it's again we're showing some good agreement with what was found in numerical simulation before, and few observational campaign. This is, for example, just to give you some like a quick hint here. This is vorticity, this is strain, this is color-coded for divergence. So this is a convergence area here. So this is most likely going to be associated with front. And if you look at the gradients of temperature, spatial gradient, this is also an area we're going to have significant gradient of temperature. So it really makes sense. This is really what you would expect. We also extend measurement of kinetic energy, down to 5, roughly 5 kilometers, which is really nice from an orbital system. Some of the things that we're looking at now, now that we have this tool, is there's been one of the area of research that we're putting some emphasis on is trying to better capture and better understand the role of ocean submesoscale on the coupling with the atmosphere. There has been a number of papers in recent years showing that the atmosphere is going to feel the imprint of ocean submesoscale all the way to the troposphere. And this is some of numerical studies here that have demonstrated this kind of coupling. The one on the right from Félix Vivant is utilizing COAS, which is a coupled ocean model from JPL. But the thing that is nice is that, again, if you just look at those weather satellite products, what I'm showing here, and this is the same region that I was showing before, is just showing the SST and detecting the location of the mask. Part of what we do for the product is identifying where those clouds, the cloud are. So we develop a cloud mask for this. The thing that is really striking to me is this is just, I don't know, like 20 hours of data. And what you're seeing is that clouds that are kind of locked, phase locked with the location of an eddy and the Gulf Stream, which I think is quite remarkable. So we're pushing really hard on this, including working with colleagues at Scripps, Leah Ziegelman, and other people on the East Coast. But I think it highlights the kind of impact those kind of observation has on the, again, developing better physical understanding of this topic. All right. So the summary for this the second part of my talk is here. So we developed this new approach to measuring ocean current, leveraging weather satellites and deep learning. We directly measure the flow without assuming geostrophy, which is a big deal. This is purely based on the kinematic of thermal structures, and again, those kind of technique open the door to routinely mapping energetic submesoscale currents. The things that we're doing now is actually combining those kind of approach with altimetry and other microwave SST, so that ultimately we expect to be able to see through the clouds and have, for some communities, for example, you can imagine having a cloud-free SST map. I mean, I think we're close to this now. For the community is going to be really focusing on the coupling with the atmosphere. This is, some things that I didn't mention is that geostationary satellite are not just GOES weather satellite, they're global. There is a constellation. This is an example in Europe here, for example. This is Eastern Mediterranean. Again, this is just a movie. There is no analysis here, but you see the complexity and the temporal evolution of those some of those features. So we're in the process of expanding GoFlow to more satellites, and so that we can get global coverage. Thank you.
Thank you, Luc. Excellent presentation. We are now for questions.
Thank you, Luc. This was a really, really cool talk. And I really enjoyed the last part or the second part. And my question is, so I guess compared to doing things with altimetry data,
Yeah.
something that looks very good with this approach is that if you're working near the coasts, then you don't have that problem that you usually have with altimetry.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, like what we're predicting is the advection, horizontal
Yeah.
advection of temperature. So there is no assumption about, geostrophy and so forth.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about altimetric data close to shore.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's like another strength from this approach.
So
Is
so
it-
one of the things that we're doing now is and I don't have it here, but in the context of SWOT, I'm working with a postdoc at Scripps in Sarah Giddings' group that has been looking at river plume of Brazil, of the Rio Grande. So they're pretty large river plume. And you can actually pick it up with SWOT. You see associated with the pressure gradient, you see actually a signal in the sea surface height anomaly. And you can pick it up as well with GoFlow. I think it's not just open ocean. It's also, it has application with coastal studies. I should mention that those kind of satellite products it's about 2 kilometer resolution in the infrared band, typically 1 kilometer in the visible band, but there is one band, red band, which has 500 meters resolution. So you get 500-meter resolution, 5-minute, temporal resolution product that is available at least during the day. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice talk. When you see very high resolution numerical models, I always wonder how they know that if these is small scales that they produce. And I wonder if your technique have you compared with high resolution numerical models, or if this technique that you developed can be used for verification of high resolution numerical models?
So part of what we've done, so we train on the numerical model. I mean, and we actually, we had to show that we're not transferring biases, for example, from the model into our prediction. So we showed this somewhat in the paper, but this is actually an active area of research because we're running GoFlow train model with Oceanography, with ROMs as well. So and showing that it's really not sensitive to the model. We're just really predicting advection. Your specific point, what we're showing is the same statistics of the flow that model has been predicting. Higher resolution model has been predicting, like ROMs and MIT. But we can't really do we could do a one-to-one comparison, but it's likely it's going to work most likely.
Okay, so this is not exactly like we could not call this observation. Right?
Oh, I think it's observation.
Observations, but with the machine learning and with the training. And
well, the machine learning is like, you can think of it as like a correlation algorithm on steroid. Like it's really like it's just it helps predicting advection much better than a standard image processing technique. So it is still observation.
Thank you.
A very, very nice talk too. And I had seen the GoFlow, but I'm very happy to have her to convince myself that it looks so beautiful, and it looks like the numerical models of high resolution. It's just that I myself have not necessarily trusted that numerical models are maybe representing really what the small scales are, and it seems that they are. But like my question is more like when you said like SST, like the sea surface temperature is not really gonna see some things, like I think you said the inertial waves, I think, when you were comparing it to SWAT.
Yeah.
And then, and SWAT sees a lot of noise, which I am not sure is real either or not. And so when you mentioned those two, I wonder how much it is a failure of maybe missing something in the sea surface temperature, or if it is just a noisy thing. I mean, how much are you missing by the fact that you're not observing that with the sea surface temperature?
Well, I think when I talk about SWAT, it's measuring SSH, right? And what they're effectively measuring is signal from internal tides and internal wave. And that's, this is not part of the currents. It's just like an artifact, like if you think about the assumption that they have, the geostrophic assumption, they shouldn't be including this. So that's why it's noise. I agree with you that it's not just the only noise that SWAT has to deal with, and I'm really not sure that we'll be able to get some mesoscale signal out of SWAT, to be honest, because it's just very noisy and there is offsets and things like this. One of the things we want to, again, there's so many things you can do with those kind of products, is looking at, we have a GoFlow product that should include both geostrophic and ageostrophic component of the flow, right? So if you compare to SWAT, you should be, or the altimetric product, you should actually separate the two, and get the ageostrophic component of it. Like these are the kind of things that we want to do. And we started to poke around a little bit with SWAT. SWAT is just so noisy. And there is subtleties about the way they're doing processing too. In particular, this Hamming filtering window that they're applying that actually puts some energy back into the lower frequency, which I have a postdoc who has a paper on this submitted. So hopefully more soon on this.
Yes, thanks very much. Very nice talk. I have several, so let me start with the first part. Sure. Because we are very interested in measuring the thickness of sargassum in the Caribbean. And so I do wonder if, is the system that you showed in the first part can be put in a drone or?
Yeah, it's actually like people have been doing this routinely. Joachim Horstmann with collaborators in Germany, as they have made like a toolbox available where effectively with a drone, you can get, if you fly, like in a stationary way, you can measure the spatial temporal evolution of the wave and retrieve information about the near surface current. The question about Sargasso algae,
yes,
is how much you're going to be. There's going to be potential issue with surface tension, like biological smoothing of the surface, and a lot of homogeneity in what you're measuring. So I don't know how it would look. It would be super interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, and in the second part, because it's you're actually, the velocities are based on following frontal features in the SSTs, right? But then if you take the equation for the SST, you may have influence of Earth interaction or other stuff that modifies the structure of the SST that you're interpreting as velocities, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
So I do wonder if you have, the question goes, because there are other efforts to use, for example, chlorophyll or other tracers. And I do wonder if you have ever tried to do this with chlorophyll images as well, for example?
Yeah, it's a good point. So like, first of all, like to the, with the SST, there are no warming, you're going to have, everybody, Eric Desaro, who is convinced now about this kind of approach, initially, when we're doing the S-mode experiment, was always saying, do not trust any SST images. You need density, like there's diurnal warming, you don't know what's going on, that there's there's also a surface warm layer in the first 1 to 2 meters that has a lot of, internal dynamics to it. But surprisingly, when you look at those kind of, videos, that it actually captures also the underlying, dynamic of the flow. What you see here is a lot of diurnal warming, right? One of the key for our approach is actually to not utilize SST, but to actually input the log grad T. So what we find is there's a lot less influence, and actually we don't see any contribution from a diurnal signal associated with it. It really picked it up. I think what people didn't realize is that this surface warming is actually over a very large area. It's pretty homogeneous. So if you look at the log grad T, you don't see as much of it. To the second point, number of people have been really encouraging me to look at chlorophyll, to look at ocean color with those kind of technique, because you can get to much higher resolution, and it's kind of what I was showing early on, where you see really those very thin chlorophyll patches. So it's on the to-do list. The challenge, though, is the nice thing about the SST is that it doesn't have, there's going to be, the biology is going to have a life of its own. So is it really a real tracer for those kind of product? On the other hand, I think it would be very interesting to run side by side an SST version with a chlorophyll version. So it would be super neat. Well, you can use ocean color. You don't necessarily need to use ocean. Well, there is two things. One, with VIIRS, you can. If you go in high latitude, you can get a VIIRS image roughly every 1 to 2 hours, which would be sufficient for this. And you can get chlorophyll out of VIIRS. About 45 degrees? Yeah. The other thing you can use is GOES has ocean color, like visible bands. So unfortunately, they don't have green band, but they have red and blue band along with shortwave IR. And there's been a number of studies showing in recent years that you can actually get reasonable estimate of chlorophyll from, combining with machine learning from red, blue, and shortwave IR. So, but again, this is outside my area of expertise. So
I have more, but thank you. You can talk.
Come back to you.
More questions? If not, I have one. Yeah. In the first part, Luc, you showed the intention to define the velocity profile in the vertical.
Yeah.
And then you didn't show much results. I wonder if you can elaborate on that. And the main important point is the connection of that very near to the surface current with the go flow results. How do you interconnect those?
Well, so the precise answer is Kelly Matsuyoshi, who is a PhD student in my group. She's actually has been focusing on Douglas for the ESMO data, looking at the energy budget across across the kind of front that that I was showing here. And she's now there is an energy cascade here, when you look at this. Where she has been focusing on kind of like small scale frontal studies. But GoFlow is going to give you the larger scale dynamic. So she's doing that. We haven't, as far as, utilizing the information from like the vertical information from David and GoFlow, I don't think it would really work. I think we're kind of limited because we also, Go flow is measuring surface currents, but the definition of surface is really more like, I'm not worrying about Stokes width here. With Dove's, we do. I mean, it's a Lagrange, we're measuring Lagrangian current, so it includes Stokes width. With Go flow, it's, I think, I see that as a, like an average over the first 20 meters. 20, 10, 20. I mean, the comparison with the ATCP is 20 meters. So it's, it's integrated. Precisely like narrowing it down, I don't know. Because this is really the response of the flow, right? I mean, that's what you see in those things kind of like being steered up.
But you are actually with the satellite, where you are actually looking at the surface, a very, very surface, right?
So what you see, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is like few micrometers. Yeah, I mean, few microns. Yeah.
So now that you mentioned that, I just wonder how does it compare the go flow measurements with high frequency radars?
Well, I mean, HF radar are nice, but they works really well when you average them. So I don't think they
When you have what?
when you average them temporarily, because they're very noisy. So we can't really do one-to-one comparison. I think the best use of HF radar is 25 hours average. So it's because it's just very noisy. So and I'm not the only one saying that. I mean, a lot of folks have been like the JPL folks with Doppler scat initially were trying to do some validation with HF radar. Never worked, but it was not their system. It was just, you can't do like phase resolve comparison. We did comparison with Doppler scat and Doves, and it's beautiful, which was very encouraging.
Thank you.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. Technical question. Is this data about GoFlow available somewhere, or?
So the code is available.
So we can compute it.
And so we, not only the code is available on archive, but we created a GitHub that we've been trying to update. Every time somebody emails us with a bug, we just, we keep it up to date. Then the data is there on the No archive. These are large data. I mean, I've been downloading a lot of data from various places. So we're starting to work with UMedSat, who wants to develop an operational product. So we're trying to deploy GoFlow on their end. But yeah, I mean, there is decades of data.
Perfect. Thank you.
I was just going to ask if anyone on Zoom has a question, they can open your microphone. We still have some people online. It looks not.
Okay.
Julio, a final one? Or
Anyone?
You're good.
Anyone else?
No.
I mean, it's the last picture or these pictures with with the clouds sticking to the ocean features is amazing. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. And I was just wondering if, I mean, have you looked at things in the tropics, and do they do similar things, or?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there is so much. I have a student looking at the, I mean, I just like, it's really opened the door to a lot of things. I have a student looking at the Agudas now, Roy Barkan, and I have a student looking at the Eastern Mediterranean. That's why I was showing this, because you have like, this is where at the end here. This is really cool too here, because you see this eddy, like right on the coast, right? It's a spiral of the sea from wall from on. Same area, right? So, and you have eddy generation here along the coastal, like just you see those things before. I mean, there's so many things. But the thing to me is really like that is striking here. When I saw that, and I mean, this is, to me, it's incredible. And it's not like this one time, right? I mean, this is literally right there, but people were not paying attention because they were not paying attention to what was at the ocean surface. And we see it, again, those studies that I'm showing here, literally predict this. We see it in the model. We see it's not just like a flux, modulation, it's also cloud. There is going to be modulation of cloud and convective system and storm associated with the boundary condition.
All right, no more. Okay, we thanks Luc again. And we can continue our discussion up in the lobby with some drinks.
Thank you.
I was wondering, you have the framework.
Yeah.
There are some ways